Welcome to my channel. I am the Philomath, and this is my series where I turn my album collection into baked goods. In this video, I will bake and decorate a cake inspired by Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. The flavor, fillings, and decoration of the cake will reflect the different features of the album inside and out. Let's start by talking about the cover art for the album. The iconic prism artwork was designed by Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Powell. Their intent was to design something that embodied themes such as transformation, stability, thought, and ambition. The beam of light forms a continuous loop into and around the album. It starts as a single slim beam of white light that becomes transfigured into a rainbow once it passes through the prism. The light continues inside, where the color green becomes a heartbeat to represent the human element present in their darker themes. I like to think that it also represents a plucked guitar string. The rainbow beam curves onward to an inverted prism, where it is condensed into a white beam once more. The entire album, in a similar fashion to the light, seamlessly blends the beginning and end of each song into one cohesive work. The vinyl disc is actually in pretty great quality, considering I found it in a garage sale. Unfortunately, there is a small scratch that causes a skip during the song Time. My favorite fact about the artwork is that the artists almost went with a design inspired by Marvel Comics' Silver Surfer before deciding on the prism. Dark Side of the Moon was released in 1973 by Harvest Records and went on to sell around 45 million copies, with Money and Us and Them released as singles in the United States. With that introduction, let's get into the process for turning this album into a cake. I'm starting with decoration because the first thing about an album that catches your eye is the artwork. With Dark Side of the Moon, I incorporated the prism, the loop of light, and the green heartbeat. I started with the prism so I could freeze it separately and add it like a topper later. This technique was inspired by a video I saw many years ago where someone decorated a sheet cake with tall parallel ridges and sprayed one side red and the other blue. When they rotated the cake, it caused the color to have an ombre effect. Of course, as you'll see later, instead of just two colors, I sprayed the whole rainbow on one side and left the other side white. While the prism chilled in the freezer, I covered the cake with black tinted chocolate buttercream. It's incredibly important that the sides are smooth and the corners are sharp. After chilling, the cake is ready to decorate. I placed a paper triangle the size of the prism from earlier on top as a guide for making indents along the sides of the cake. This made piping out the loop much easier. One side had a single white curve, while the other had the rainbow. Red, orange, and yellow went on first, before blue and purple. I left green for last so I could pipe the heartbeat over the other colors. As a last touch, I threw some sprinkles on the border because I thought it would look like a nice homage to their light show. Now this was the tricky part that was most stressful for me. I really had no idea how this was going to turn out. I used pieces of cardboard to prevent the colors from bleeding into each other. I think I managed to pull it off quite well. I was really excited to place the topper on the cake. To bring this together, I piped a shell border along the edges to integrate the prism better with the loops. After all that, I realized how much empty space was left over. Since I had some colored buttercream, I piped out "I'll see you on the dark side of the moon" in different colors. These are definitely my favorite lyrics from the album. We saw how the album's artwork influenced the outside. Now, let's see how the music itself influenced the flavors and techniques that went into the cake. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the prism held some symbolism about change and transformation. Dark Side of the Moon was Roger Waters' initiative to mature the band going forward. For example, Waters wanted to make a single, unified theme for the album, which included stresses they experienced while performing, as well as general aggravations of life such as greed, violence, madness, and time. Direct and clear lyrics, coupled with a strong vision, brought this album to life. I reflected quite a while on what those themes meant to me, as well as how to incorporate them into the cake, before I came up with a pretty great idea. I thought the best way was to focus on what aggravated me as a pastry chef. The chocolate sponge cake formula I used in this video was the same kind I made in school. One time in class, I tried making this cake and it came out with a sunken middle. I tried 2 more times with the same result, causing me to spiral into self-doubt and anguish. At the end of the day, we came to realize that I was using leftover frying oil instead of vegetable oil. This story is to illustrate that this formula brings me back to a time when I experienced intense aggravation. Of course, I can laugh about it now. Once the cake was cool, I split it into 3 layers. I used the plastic mold for assembly because the main filling for this cake is chocolate mousse. An important rule when using mousse of any kind is to leave the assembly for the last step, because once you put the ingredients together, the mousse will start to set. The chocolate mousse I used in this cake was lightened with a type of egg foam called a patibon. Eggs and yolks are whipped on high for several minutes until they are light and fluffy. Sugar that has been dissolved in water is cooked to 240 degrees Fahrenheit and poured into the egg foam while it is mixing. Your patibon is ready when it is cool to the touch. The last component for the mousse was some whipped cream. Make sure to store it into the fridge until you're ready to use. Dark Side of the Moon was an incredible technical achievement. They used state-of-the-art machines such as the VCS3 and a 16-track mixer. This style of mousse that uses an egg foam, for me, was the first way that I felt like I was doing something really complicated yet elegant. To drive my point home, I felt like I started to mature as a pastry chef because I was using much more elaborate techniques. Having said that, I will admit to a mistake I made during this portion. I accidentally allowed the chocolate to seize up while incorporating the cream, which resulted in flakes of chocolate in the mousse. Some say that is a feature, and all in all, I think it actually still works with the themes of things that aggravate me as a pastry chef. The final component to the cake was a strawberry soak and strawberry jam. I used to make many custom orders for friends and family when I just started baking as a potential career. 9 out of 10 cakes had strawberries. Needless to say, I became very pretentious and thought strawberry as a decoration as well as a filling was just plain overrated. Part of the creative process for the album revolved around adding guest voices to the ends of some of their songs. Perhaps most famously, Claire Torrey lent her incredible vocals to Great Gig in the Sky. Additionally, random people in the recording studio were asked to answer questions on cards ranging from their favorite color to when the last time they were violent. Those responses were added to the ends of some songs. Paul and his wife Linda McCartney recorded lines as well, but their lines were not included because the band thought that Paul was just not serious enough. None of that information actually went into creating the cake, but it was just too cool not to be included. The song is over, now it's time for the outro. Let's see the cake next to the album that inspired it. Seeing this cake decorated at last was pure joy for me. My dad was the one who got me into the prog rock genre with Pink Floyd. He has a set of huge speakers that make it easy to hear our favorite records all around the house. It's hard to pin down exactly what I like most about Dark Side of the Moon. The consistent themes, the emotion, the story, the artwork, all of it comes together in this truly special record. It was a really long process to get this video out, and I can't wait to have a slice for myself. I put this project off for quite some time because I was worried about the final product. Now that it's done, I can't wait to get started on the next one. This album speaks on the frustrations we endure in our lives, from the incomprehensible like war and greed to the more mundane like creative blocks and dissatisfaction with your everyday projects. There's much to be said about the literal and symbolic nature of the art and themes of the album, but ultimately, the point is for the audience members to have their own interpretations. Dark Side of the Moon was the album that started my collection and continues to be one of my favorite albums of all time. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more content like this and more.